All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Gene Manley at his home in Eugene. It's February 28th, 2020. Gene, thank you so much for joining us
You're
today.
welcome.
Before we start talking about Linfield, let's talk about a little about your background before Linfield. So tell me about where you grew up and kind of what you did before Linfield.
I grew up in Coburg, Oregon. From the time I was in about the 8th grade, I worked on a farm every summer. And in high school, at that time, it was a small school. We played all three sports. We were fortunate in that played six-man football, but we won 3 state championships. And in basketball, we got beat in the tournament every year by the team that won the state championship. And in baseball, we took second one year in state. So we basically came from a very winning tradition. Not necessarily me, but just a bunch of good kids.
What was your favorite sport before in high school?
Baseball.
So tell me how you ended up at Linfield.
Dr. Holmes, remember him?
Mm-hmm.
He was on a road trip, I guess, and stopped by our house in like June or July and said, "Why don't you come to Linfield?" And I was going to go to Oregon, just not do anything. And he was telling me all of the nice things about Linfield and what we could do. And anyway, Mom and Dad and I drove up, and we liked it, and they thought it'd be nice in a small school, and that's where we ended up.
What were your kind of first impressions of Mcminnville?
I never went downtown. The campus is the only thing I saw, so I liked it. I liked it. It was small. I think it was like 700 or 800 students at the time. You got to know everybody in your class. You had to go to, I forget what they call it, but every day we had to go at 9 o'clock at the
Chapel?
Chapel. Yeah, that's chapel. Thank you. And until you were a junior, then you could skip out of it. But yeah, no, it was fun. And again, I played all 3 sports as a freshman. I dropped basketball after that. Became basketball manager for Roy Elser, which was nice. Enough money to help pay my tuition.
Tell me about your studies. What were your favorite classes? What did you major in?
Well, I was going to major in dental, but I couldn't pass chemistry, so I passed on that. Then I went into education. And
Go ahead.
And then I actually taught school for 3 years and decided I did not want to be a teacher. So I branched out into other things. Ended up in kind of the insurance business.
Were there any favorite professors you had or favorite classes?
Class I enjoyed, which is kind of stupid, but I really enjoyed a philosophy class from Dr. Taylor. He was one of the neatest professors I've ever been around. And that probably name's never come up before, but he was real worthwhile, and he taught real things. And trying to think who else. I liked all of them, really. I mean, Dr. Bowling, I'd take a biology class from him and an anatomy class, and he had a bad eye, by the way. And it would look to one side, and he'd always say, "Don't answer me if I'm looking at you, answer if I'm pointing at you." And it got to be a real joke. But
What about outside of sports? Were there any other kind of extracurricular activities you were part of?
not really, no. I belonged to a fraternity, but I lived on campus all the time. I never lived in that fraternity house. My best friend belonged to another fraternity, so we roomed together and went back and forth 2 or 3 times a week to the houses.
So tell me about, was football always part of the plan? Did you always want to play football in college?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play something. And like I say, I played football, and I ended up being a pretty decent kicker. And so I kicked all the way through. And I actually didn't start till my senior year. But I started playing baseball almost immediately. And Roy Elser was one of my, heroes in life, my mentors. I thought he was him and my dad and a couple other guys were people that I really looked up to.
What was it about him?
Very honest with you, fun to be around, liked to win, and it was just and again, I like baseball. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think it's kind of a dull sport, but to me it's exciting. There's nothing more fun in athletics than hitting a baseball hard. You can talk about anything else you want, but and it's probably the hardest thing to do.
So tell me about your. You mentioned for being a kicker to start with at football. Tell me about your first memories of playing football at Linfield, first practices or first season.
Well, first of all, I had no idea what I was getting into. I played 6-man football in high school, and I did play in the Shrine game, which was 2 weeks up there playing 11-man, which is my first experience at 11-man. And I know the first time out we had to run a 6-minute mile, or else we had to run it every day. And it was tough. I did it, but it was tough for an old fat guy. And we went from there. And well, Vic Fox, who you're going to talk to later, he didn't even try. He just wanted to run a mile every night because he couldn't run 6-minute miles. They just run out before practice and do 4 laps on the field and go to practice. But it was, and again, it was fun. I mean, I learned a whole lot. I mean, I learned a lot I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I learned that I didn't know a lot, I guess, is even better. And at that time, they had a pretty good JV program. We played, I think, 7 or 8 games.
Were there particular teammates that stood out as, especially like early on in your career, particular teammates that stood out as memorable players or memorable teammates?
Yeah, Vic Fox and Howard Morris were the keys to the whole thing, I thought. Then Ron Parrish was a good quarterback. Dick Flood worked hard. Vern Marshall, who was not necessarily a great player, but he was a very inspirational player. And he played 3 sports too. Howard Glenn was a real stud. Yeah, I guess.
What memorable games? Were there memorable games that you look back on? Memorable? I know you mentioned going down to Cal Poly at one point. That was as a plane trip.
Yeah, that was my junior year, I believe, and it was a good trip. But yeah, they kicked our fanny pretty good. But I think that's the only game we lost all year. We went down and found out what we needed to do to win. Probably my first claim to fame was that I kicked 2 extra points. We beat Whitman 14-13. So I made the big time then.
So tell me about the 56 season. Obviously, you mentioned kind of off camera that you were part of the last losing team at Linfield. Tell me about the 56 season and did anything change? Was there anything different about that season?
Not really, just that we had a real good, junior class in 56. And in 55, they were younger. And I think everybody just got older and better. And we won a couple, 3 close games. And I forget what our record was, but I think it was probably 6-3 or something. But then next year, I think we only lost 1. And then my senior year, we won our last game to go 5-4, and I didn't think anything about it. I mean, there was no streak then. What's a 3-year streak, you know?
I'm curious. In '56, when they won the league title, it had been 20 years since Linfield had won a league title. Tell me about. Do you have any memory of the celebration? Did it mean a lot to the team?
I don't think it meant as much to the team as it did the coaches. I mean, it meant a lot to the team, but hell, we hadn't been around for 20 years, so we didn't know that. It was, it was a fun time, and again, everybody got their nice jackets, and they got somebody downtown, I think, to donate that, because the football program didn't have any money.
Did anything change after that? After winning a championship, did Linfield, were there more expectations the next year? Did you expect to be good now, or did anything else change?
No, I think, like I say, I grew up winning and everything, and I just expected to win all the time, and I was surprised when we didn't. But I'm trying to think. I think the only thing different is that when I was a junior and the class ahead of me was really good, we didn't do as much as hitting on the field. In fact, if I remember right, we'd go into the classroom like 2 or 3 days a week and go over what we're going to do at practice and what we're trying to do. So there was a lot of in-classroom teaching rather than on the field classroom teaching. And the kids were mature enough that it took pretty good.
So tell me about Coach Durham. What were your kind of initial impressions of him?
Semi-afraid, I guess. No, he was a nice person. He always was, but he never was close to maybe some players, but just as close to everybody on the team, he wasn't. He was Roy Helser was more of a people person, and he was always his assistant. I don't know what he did, but he was his assistant. And trying to think who else. We had old Pineapple Wills from Hawaii was helping, and Chuck. What was his name that went to Pacific and became Chuck? He's Pacific baseball coach for a long time. They named the field after him. They just came back from the service and they helped. They were the JV coaches. Marv Hitchcroft, I think, was one. But again, I dealt with them more than I did with Paul and them to start with.
How would you describe the sort of the style of play for Linfield at that time?
Well, it's right now it'd be very vanilla, but then it was kind of innovative. You know, they had people in motion. We'd split the ends once in a while. And like I say, it was kind of a more innovative than. And on defense, we'd always went with elaborate defenses, and then after about the third play, we'd go back to our standard 5-3. But again, Howard Morris moved over to nose guard, and Vic moved from guard to linebacker, and they were really good. And they were very motivated, and they would motivate people around them. I'd say Ron Parrish and those two, and maybe Jerry Byer, were the inspirational leaders on the team.
Mm-hmm. What kind of format did that take at that time? Was it a lot of rah-rah speeches? Was it a lot of how did they inspire?
Basically, you just expect to do a job. I mean, it was very. I saw Durham. Maybe it was that year at College of Idaho. I don't know, but I only heard him swear once in 4 years. We were at College of Idaho and we're up 28-0 in the first quarter, and right at the end of the quarter they score, and he comes in and he says, "Damn it, guys!" He said, "The fish aid is going to kill us. You can't give up any points." And I could say we're kicking their fannies pretty good. And like I said, it's the only time I heard him swear. He was very righteous. In fact, I don't know if anybody else. I walked in there one time and he's put a corset on. I just couldn't believe it. He's so trim and neat, but you know he was a good person. In fact, when he was at the athletic director at the University of Hawaii, I had a kid that played for me that wanted to go to Hawaii, and I called him, and he basically helped get him in. But I wasn't one to go back and talk to the coaches. You know, I mean, I Helser did, but the rest of them, they were Mr. Durham.
Mm-hmm. So with Helser, did you stayed in touch with him after you left?
Pretty much, as much as I could.
So tell me about after you graduated from Linfield. You mentioned you thought teaching first.
Yeah. And
so tell me about that kind of experience, and then why you changed direction.
Well, I loved the kids. I couldn't stand the parents, and I thought, you know, for $4,500 a year, I can do better than this. I made more money my senior year in college and that summer than I did my first year teaching. And you know, So I kept coaching. I coached baseball, little kids baseball, all the way up to high school in American Legion for 59 straight years for no money, just helping out our head coach. I loved kids, loved to coach them.
At what point did you meet your wife?
We were next door neighbors.
Here?
Yeah, in Coburg.
Coburg?
Yeah, our gardens were, my dad's garden and his garden were right together. And it was kind of tough for me to sneak over there without him finding out about it. Like my son said, "When did you decide to get married?" And I said, "When her dad told me to." That's not true, but it's a joke of the family.
Tell me about following Linfield football after you left as an alum. Did you follow it fairly closely?
Not really. I tried to go, and I still do try to go to a game a year, but it's an 80-mile drive, and it's a lot better. I mean, you know, you got a street there now that you can buy food on. Before you had to get a hot dog at the snack stand, and they'll even serve beer up there now, I think. And when I was in school, we had a friend of mine put on social probation because he was riding in a car with a guy that was 21 that had beer in the trunk.
It's a dry campus back then.
Oh yeah, very. Yeah, and I didn't drink. Well, I think I'd had my first beer when I was playing baseball as a freshman. I went on a road trip with the guys who went down to Oregon and came back, and they got a six-pack. And I said, I don't want any. He said, everybody's going to have one. So I took about 2 sips and gave it to the guy next to me. But no, there wasn't any. And the dorms were all separate, and you didn't go in the girls' dorm, and you had dorm hours, and it was okay. You could work things out. Not that way, Caroline.
You had to be creative, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
No smoking on campus. Maybe there still isn't. I don't know. Let's go over to pop shops. You know where that used to be? Everybody have a cigarette over there and play the pinball machines. I didn't. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. But
so tell me about what point you became aware of the streak. What point did that become something that you knew about as an alum?
probably 30, 35-year streak. I mean, I once they started saying about it, I knew it, you know, and I'd follow it. I'd check the scores every day, and every week on the internet and stuff. But I mean, it wasn't something like I was going to slice my wrists if it ended or something.
Well, what does it mean to you, though, as someone who was on the team that started it?
Well, I guess my dad said if you never start something, you can't finish it. So I guess it was nice to be someone that started. And again, that's something that there's only that many people that can say that. And it's kind of neat. And I have kept in touch with a lot of them. But like I say, most of them have died or have dementia or whatever.
If someone didn't know about the streak, about Linfield, and that was sort of the first thing they heard about, what would you want someone to take away from that? What does 64 years of winning football mean to people outside the program? Well,
I'm going to quote Ad Rutschman now, if I can throw him in there. I went to a welcome to Little Linfield students here in Eugene one time. He asked me to come down, and they were trying to recruiting. And what he said is, if you don't want to be a winner, don't come to Linfield. Plain and simple. And I think that's what it is. It just proves that you're going to be a winner. And I don't mean in football or baseball or basketball. I mean just a winner in life. Because those things carry over to life. If you're used to winning, it's a lot easier to win. I mean, I've seen some kids that come from schools that never won a thing, and they have a hard time understanding that it's really fun to win.
So you mentioned you still try to get to a game every so often. What's your impression of watching Linfield football today or recently? What's it like watching that game now?
Oh, it's a lot more exciting. No, they throw the ball around, they run, they're fast. It's fun to watch. It's kind of like people used to go to Nebraska games when they win 60-2, and I'd say, "Well, how can you have fun at that?" But it is kind of fun. You know, it's. I mean, you don't think that way, but. And again, I got following Oregon sports because it's a lot closer.
As you kind of look ahead for Linfield, what do you kind of hope for the future of the school and of the football team?
Well, I tell kids that are going to Linfield that if you're going for baseball, it's not baseball. If you're going for football, it's not football. You're going to school because of the relationships you're going to build and the education you're going to get. Because if you're going to there just play football, you're going to the wrong place. And I've probably helped recruit a dozen or more kids to Linfield. And they'll come back and say, you know, it's just a great experience. And that's always ask them, how you doing in school? I never ask them how they're doing athletically. Because if you're what that is, that brings you the whole new social thing. When you play football, all of a sudden you're part of a group and everything. And you know, the friends I had at Linfield, again, there was 4 of us. I used to play double-deck pinochle every 3 nights a week. And surprisingly, we did that until about the last 10 years when a couple of them died. We'd get together and we'd nothing to drink except Diet Pepsi or Pepsi. And that's all. And we'd start like at 6 o'clock at night. We'd play all night and then go golfing that day and come back and play some more. And then the wives would drag us home. Well, the wives would go too, but it was just, you know, it was just And surprisingly, one of those was a minister, and the other two were deacons in the church, and then there was me.
Does that make you the heathen of the group?
I guess. But they're really funny. The preacher would say, "We got to play for a dime or something," you know.
I know you obviously, you and I know each other outside of this, and I know you sent your son, and your grandson also went to Linfield as well. Tell me about that experience of having multiple generations under you going to the school.
Pride, I guess. Stan went to BYU for a year. He wanted to go to Linfield, but BYU was about a third the cost, and they contacted me, played baseball, and he come back and says, "Dad, I'm not going back, I'm going to go to Linfield." So that's what he did. And then Zach wanted to, and his grades weren't good enough, and went down to Shasta for a year and came back, and his grades still weren't good enough, but he sometimes worked his way in there somehow or other. Somebody helped him, and he graduated. And like I say, he's kind of saw the light, and then he went back to Northwest Christian and got a master's in finance or something, I forget. Man, his mom went to Linfield, Stan's wife.
Whole family affair.
Yeah.
So when someone says the word Linfield, what does that mean to you?
That makes me happy, I guess. I don't know if that's a good way to answer it or not, but it makes me feel good because it's been a great memory, and they're still being made, I guess.
Talk a little bit about your equipment. So
football equipment.
We've asked this to everybody. So tell us about your pads and your helmet.
Okay, I got a good story on that one. I go to Coburg High School. We didn't even have a face mask. The first face mask I saw was a little bar went across when I got to Linfield. And it was, hell, that's fine with me, And the pads, they were better than I had at high school. And we even had thigh pads up there, So it was kind of neat. But the thing I was going to say, I think it was my sophomore year, we played at OCE, what I call it, was I guess Western Oregon now, OCE, and I'm playing, and I got one of these big Riddell helmets on, and a guy hits me. And I don't remember him hitting me. I don't remember nothing until I'm sitting on the bench, sitting there with the helmet in my hand. And it was about the third quarter, I guess, and I sat through the whole game, and I got back and took my helmet, and it was cracked all the way around. And so the next day I went down and I got one of those little New Rockney leather-type helmets. I found one of those, and I wore that the rest of my career. But, at that time, you didn't spare people. I'm saying right now, if you take the face mask off the football helmets, you'd have a lot less injuries. It's just, people use them as weapons. And if you're going to stick your bare face in there, it's not going to be that way.
It looks like there was some momentum at the end of the 55 season with a couple of pretty solid wins. At the end of the 55 season, going into 56, what were some of the expectations of the team?
Hey, Rich couldn't even remember his only baseball team when he was 99. That's 65 years ago, man. No, I don't know. I think that, again, expectations for me was we're going to win. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's always the way it was. And we got a bunch of people on the team that felt we were going to win. I guess I don't know the expectations. It's just that we're going to go out there and do our best and kick some fanny.
Was there a team that was sort of notoriously known as sort of the best team in the conference at the time?
I don't know because we became that. Lewis and Clark was always tough. Willamette was always tough. Trying to think who else. We didn't have the schools in Western in our league at that time. You had Whitman and College of Idaho, and College of Idaho was kind of tough. Whitman never was, even though we barely beat him a couple times. We played Southern Oregon every year, and we played SOC and OCE. I mean, they're different names now, but in fact, we even played Portland State one year, I think. And we also played some semi-pro team out of Seattle one time.
I've heard some stories about that. Do you remember that game at all?
All I remember is I was going to block a guy that was about 6'8", and he weighed about 230. And I went in to block him, and he just took his elbows and he popped them into me like that, and he just picked me up and set me aside. And I said, "Wait a minute." He must have been 24 or 5 years old, rock hard, I didn't have a chance. But no, it was fun. It was a good life. And again, there was no trainer. I mean, coaches, "Yeah, you're okay." I hurt my shoulder and they sent me to a chiropractor, you know. I mean, it's because he was free. But, no, it's, and again, we had a lot more problems my senior year because we lost everybody. I mean, we went through 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the first 3 games, I guess. And, you know, I almost wanted to say, hey, let me play quarterback, but because they weren't any good their first 3 years. And I'm not going to mention names.
You mentioned, I think it was in the 57 season that you went down and lost to Cal Poly.
Right.
And you mentioned that was the only game you lost. You said something earlier about kind of knowing what you had to do to win at that point. Tell me what did you learn from that game?
Well, that those guys were physically better than us, and we had to get physically and mentally better if we're going to win. I mean, I know I was playing end, and I didn't start, but I was in, and I went down a little out pattern, and the guy was right there in front of me. And so I told the quarterback, I said, hey, just to call the same thing and I'll just fake out and go in. Well, I faked out and he was there, and I faked in, he was there too. You know, I mean, they're just quick and fast and smart. And so all of a sudden you had to reevaluate what your strengths were and what your weaknesses were. And I didn't see I saw the film, but I'm sure the coaches found out a lot about what was going on there.
In the program, it lists only like 3 total coaches. If you look at today's roster, there's
More than that, because they had a lot of student coaches that coming back for their masters, like say Chuck Buffaro, Marv Hitchcock or something like that was there, and Wills was there, and somebody else. Well, Helser, I don't know if he's on the list, but Helser always coached, and those guys coached the JV team. But again, we all practiced together, and then split up after that.
I was just going to say, if you could kind of describe a practice. I think in today's coaching world, everything is so segmented based on position and skill.
I'm a freshman going against a big senior that's kicking my fanny every day, and you still did it. It made them feel good, but not me. But then you go into positions, and they did a lot of time. I'm thinking back now, I'm not even sure I'm right. I think they did a lot of work on positioning and linebackers and what are you going to do in here and how movement, and they basically did that on the fly, even though they had a purpose, I'm sure. But a lot of pass patterns to get yourself in shape. We had to learn how to recover fumbles. That was a big deal up there because, we did that every day.
Imagine you put out some pretty sloppy fields over the years.
You know, not that bad. It was some, but we didn't practice on Maxwell Field. We practiced on the old baseball field out there in left field and across the track. But no, it was some. I know Pacific just was a mud hole. But, it was not bad. But we played at night. I don't know if you knew that or not. Yeah, all of our games were night games.
Interesting, really.
I don't know if anybody's mentioned that or not, but, we played at night. 7 o'clock or something. Cold, clear nights or wet nights, cold nights. Yeah.
Do you know why night games? Do you have any idea why?
I have no idea, except that's when they were scheduled, I guess.
Rumor on the street is we'll have a night game next year.
Ooh.
One of the first 2 games is going to be.
No, it was nice. You go out there and I don't know how they do it now, but we'd come out and everybody would come out one by one. They go right around the field and they do a big serpentine, and they still do all that stuff.
They come out and they split usually, and offense goes one way and defense goes
the other way. We just went out in a big line and went around and did a big serpentine, and it just seemed like they came out forever. Everybody dressed down. All 100 of us.
What about, I'm just curious, we haven't asked this of anybody else yet, but I'm curious about off-season. Did you do any football in the off-season? Were you just expected to stay in shape?
I played basketball.
You played other sports?
Yeah, I played other sports. And then I worked in the summer. I worked on the farm or worked in the construction part of the time.
So as a team, there were no off-season activities?
Yeah. See you August 15th. Be able to run a 6-minute mile. It's basically, come back in shape. But nobody lifted weights then. By the way, there was no basically weight program.
Yeah, we've heard that. They heard that the coaches didn't want you getting too bulky.
I don't know what it was, but we didn't want to do it either.
How well were games attended in the 1956-57 season? Were there a lot of students that supported the program?
Well, the games I've went to up there, I noticed I think the student support was a lot higher back then, and basically the stands were pretty full. But I think that as society grows, I think that the students aren't as close as we lived in the dorms, and you knew everybody in the dorm, and you get 5 or 6 different people. Just everybody came out to the game. You knew everybody.
So all the questions we have for you today, Gene.
That's all the answers I have then.
And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
Okay.
Thanks,
you.
Rich. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So good to see you again.